All right, so my screen is taken up with a PowerPoint, so I would just ask that other CDD staff that are on the call to please keep out an eye on chat. But again, welcome everybody to this Submitting Your CDD Quarterly Report call. Lots of updates to be made. This is going to be, if you were able to join us last Tuesday, somewhat similar, but with an increased focus on submitting your quarterly report with the caveat of the new transition to the SFS system. So we definitely want to spend some time focusing there, as well as leaving ample time at the end for questions and answers to make sure everybody is comfortable as we approach the quarterly report due date. So for today's meeting, just ask everybody to keep themselves on mute. If you do have any questions or want to contribute to discussion, there is the chat feature that you are welcome to leave it in. You're also welcome to do a raise hand. We will stop periodically for questions throughout today's meeting. So you can either hold your questions till there, or as I mentioned, put them in the chat and CDD staff will be monitoring. And if you are having tech issues, as mentioned, a number of staff are on the call. If you're comfortable reaching out to your grants coordinator, they may be able to assist separately, but hopefully everybody is able to connect successfully today. So quick run through of our agenda. We're going to do very brief introductions. As I mentioned, a lot to cover today. Actually, for all the grantees on chat, we're actually just going to do intros in the chat. So if you want to pull that up, put your name, organization, and project, and that'll give us a good sense of who is on the call today. We are going to do a brief overview of the new quarterly reporting process, which should be familiar with most folks at this point, but we definitely want to reinforce that. We're going to go into our quarterly reporting requirements. So that's typically what we do on these calls. We usually host these before quarterly reports are due. We are going to do a somewhat abbreviated version of that just so we can, again, get plenty of time for walking through claim submissions in SFS and have time to field questions. So some just brief introductions. My name is Drew Webster. I am Communications and Grant Coordinator with the Council on Developmental Disabilities. So you all should have been receiving quite a few emails from me over the last month as we have been preparing for this transition to SFS. I know we have a couple of folks from the SFS and Grants Gateway teams with us today, and I do want to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves as well. So I'll start with Brad.
Hey, Drew, thank you. Yes, my name is Brad McMillan. I work with ITS in the Grants Management Unit. In the past, we've provided technical support and training for the Grants Gateway system. So I recognize a few names here. Maybe I've worked with a few of you in the past on some Grants Gateway issues. Moving forward, we'll be providing some support for the new SFS Grants Management module. So hope to hear from you soon, and hopefully we can help you with any issues you have in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. And yeah, Brad has always been incredibly helpful through the Gateway, and we're happy to continue to have his support as we move into SFS. And then Liz.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Liz Vandenberg. I work here at the Statewide Financial System, aka SFS. My area of expertise is in the claiming and the payment side of the system. And pretty much in a nutshell, I oversee any changes to the system that impact payment. So anything that gets approved for change, I participate and oversee all the testing and implementation through stabilization.
Thank you, Liz. And just as a reminder, please keep yourselves muted unless speaking. We do get some feedback otherwise. So yes, very happy to have Liz joining us today. Liz has been absolutely instrumental in our preparation for this transition. So again, thank you, Liz, for taking the time to join us.
My pleasure. Thank you for including me.
All right. So the goal of today, hopefully at the end of this call, you will feel prepared to successfully submit your quarterly reports. Again, a lot of changes, so we want to provide ample TA and opportunity for everyone to know what to expect as we approach the due date. So just some information on submitting your quarterly reports. So as you all know at this point, quarterly reporting will no longer be done in the Grants Gateway. Our upcoming reports are due January 31st, and that is for the reporting period of October 1st to December 31st, 2023. So your report should include activities that occurred during that period, as well as expenses. So for those of you who have had a grant with us for a while, these will be a little bit of a refresher. If you are new, just as a reminder, we kind of have two different areas that you should be reporting against. The first is called the program report. Your grants coordinator should have provided you it's a Word document that really just asks a series of questions for us to collect information related to activities that happened in the previous quarter. We also ask for any backup materials to support that program, so flyers for events, photos, stories that maybe didn't fit neatly into the report. You know, there's a number of things that you can include to just show us the activities that have happened throughout the last quarter of your grant. So previously, program reports were included within your Grants Gateway quarterly report submission. For this quarter, we are asking you to send an email to your grants coordinators with your program report and backup program documentation. We will be rolling out a new system in April, so you won't be doing the email submission. That'll just be for this quarter while we get prepared for that new system. So it should be all set there. If you do have any questions about who your grants coordinator is, please put that in the chat. The other half is your expenditure report, and that's where we get to see what money has been sent so we can reimburse you for expenses from the previous quarter. That would include your expenditure report. Depending on when you started with us, you will either have a PDF. I think the majority of you should have a PDF at this point. A few of you may be working off of the Excel version of your expenditure report. But again, if you are unsure of what your expenditure is or if it's up to date, please reach out to your coordinator, grants coordinator, so we can make sure that you have the right template to be working off of. And so to submit your expenditure report, it's actually going to be a claim for payment within the SFS system, and we do ask that you upload these documents with your SFS submission, which we will, again, Liz is on the call and will give us a little bit of a live demonstration on what you can expect when you are doing that claim submission within SFS. So again, we're going to do a quick overview of kind of what components are included within these reports before we transition over to doing a walkthrough of the SFS submission. So this is, if you're not familiar with the program report, this is the cover page. So this is what you should be looking for. Again, if you're not familiar with it, please reach out to your coordinator so we can give you a copy so you can be working off of that. The quarterly report, again, is just a spot for you to put activities through your previous quarter. That includes narrative pieces, data that you collected, satisfaction data, demographic data, work, systems work that you've been doing, and photos and stories, anything that you've been able to collect through the activities you have done through the previous quarter should all be input into your program report. Some tips, so you have a number of things, as we had mentioned, that you could and should be including within your program report. So it's a review of the quarter. It's definitely a good spot to flag any challenges that you have had implementing your grant or any additional technical assistance that you would like to be receiving from the Council on Developmental Disabilities. Again, we don't want you just to be restricted to the reporting to flag those. Certainly reach out to us, but this is another opportunity for you to put in writing kind of what your experiences are. Also a spot for you to keep us updated with any potential staffing changes. It's a spot to reflect your cultural competency efforts throughout the quarter. And dollars leveraged is one that people aren't typically familiar with, and it's not often reported. What that is if there are like dollar contributions outside of our grant dollars or your match, you can put that in there. Certainly something we want to see if you are able to get support outside of our grant work to help with the activities, or our grant dollars to help with the activities of your specific project. So this is the program report is another spot to capture data. So it's definitely important to be double checking your numbers. If we are seeing kind of inconsistencies with the data that you are reporting, we will be following up. That will slow down kind of the approval process, and that will slow down ultimately the payment. So definitely keep an eye on your data that you are including within this report to make sure that it is accurate. You have just another useful tip on your program report. you have a few lines related to activities and then the amount of people who participated in those activities. If you don't have enough lines in there, there is, if you go between the cells, I think you can see my mouse, there's that little plus mark on the screen. You can add additional lines for activities if you do exceed that amount there. And definitely be sure to include a description of the activity. So a couple, common errors that we see within the data submissions for people just to be aware of. When we are asking for numbers, we do need specific amounts. These should not be estimations. They should not be guesses. It is numbers that you need to be collecting, so we will need the specific amount. So as you see on the left, some things that we would flag. You can't put around 50, 20 plus, or a range of responses. They should be specific numbers that you have collected related to the activity that you are reporting on. Definitely double check the math. If we do see anything, so for example, if you are submitting demographic data and you have, say, 13 people with developmental disabilities who provided data, but then we add up the race category and it comes out to 15, we know that there's something wrong with what was submitted, because you can have more people submitting race than you have people reflected within the top number there. So the top number should always be the highest. Sometimes you can't have a lower number within these tables because not everybody may fill out a specific question, but if this number is higher, that is something that, or lower than what's down in the fields, it is something we will flag and need to follow up, and it will slow down kind of prompt payment for your report. Couple examples again, as you can see, the top number 4, and then we have down here, those do not add up to 4 or anything less. That is something we would flag for revisions. This one, you can see that there are exactly 4 numbers included in race, which is included under 4 family members. So if that's how it is, that is great. That's what we want to see, and your quarterly report will be processed faster. Impact stories. Definitely include impact stories. We definitely want to hear anybody's responses to participating in the grant. If there's specific stories that you have captured, please include. Stories are so powerful and such a great way for us to know the activities and the true impact of the program that you are providing. So again, I'm going very quickly through this to provide ample time for our walkthrough in SFS. I'm going to go through the questions right now, but if you have any questions, again, please put them in chat and we'll be able to respond. So moving on from the program reporting, we're going to go right into expenditure reporting. This is a screenshot of the Excel version. If you have the PDF version, it'll look a little bit different, but this is where you should be calculating and cataloging expenses throughout the quarter. So here's a screenshot of the PDF version. So your expenditure report should look and resemble the approved budget for yours. So there will be line items already written into your expenditure report, again, based off of the approved budget that we had come to agree on during the contracting phase. There are a couple of fields at the top that you'll want to be updating depending on the period and quarter that you are in within your specific grant. Now, this is actually an updated screenshot. I need to get an updated one within SFS, but it does look somewhat similar as far as what you're needing to do. Outside of the expenditure report, we also are going to need you to fill out your expenses within SFS. In both the expenditure report and that claim within SFS, you want to make sure that the numbers are the same. If we're seeing different numbers reported in the different fields, we're going to, again, need to flag that and just kind of get verification on which numbers are correct and accurate, but certainly be comparing what you're putting in SFS to what you are including on your expenditure report. As you know, any expense that you make using grant funds and match funds does need supporting documentation to prove that those expenses did in fact happen during the quarter. So supporting documents can include receipts, payment vouchers, payroll, invoices, You know, there's a number of acceptable documentation to ensure that the activities and the expenses that you are claiming did in fact happen, so we can comfortably reimburse your claim. The only exception to that is indirect. So if you do have an indirect line in your approved budget, we do not need to see backup documentation for that. But that should not, you know, indirect should not exceed 10% of your total direct expenses. I think I see a comment from Robin. Popped up quick. Let me see if I can actually get the chat up.
Yeah, let us know, Drew, if you want us to read off the question too.
Do you mind, Jackie?
Yeah, no problem. So Robin asks, what do you want for payroll, timesheets, and pay stubs? What do you want for payroll, comma, timesheets or pay stubs?
Timesheets and pay stubs would be perfect. If you actually have kind of a specific example related to your grant of what you're able to submit, Robin, definitely encourage you maybe to send that over to your grants coordinator. That way we can ensure. I don't know if Jesse is on the call as well. Jesse, if you are, please feel free to unmute and clarify.
Yeah, Drew, I mean, basically there's multiple ways that we can receive the documentation. So there's two components ideally that we're looking for is, you know, some form of like a payroll report or pay stubs meets, you know, the first criteria of showing the expense. But then also a timesheet meets the requirement of certifying time and effort. So that's ultimately what we're looking for is, you know, proof of the expense, but also proof of the time and effort. So to Drew's point, yeah, if you want to, you know, show us ahead of time or with that report, you know, Kira and I can kind of follow up with you and let you know if what you're giving us is sufficient or how we can get the documentation that's needed.
Great, thank you. All right, again, some additional examples of what can be accepted as supporting documentation when it comes to personnel services. Some examples of supporting documentation that can be submitted for contractual services, equipment, and operating expenses, including invoices. We did want to note that the volunteer rate, because I know a lot of people use volunteer, the volunteer rate specifically sometimes for match, the current rate is $35.71 per hour. That is as of April, but I do believe that is still the current number. There is a link here where you can definitely, you know, if you are using volunteer hours, stay up to date and make sure that it is. But we do try to keep that number updated when we are having these calls to make sure everybody's using the appropriate value for volunteers. As I had mentioned before, the amount of direct expenses or indirect that you can claim should not exceed 10% of direct expenses, and the amount of indirect expenses submitted should be proportional to the direct expenses submitted with that report. So it should be 10% for that reporting period. And again, unless your organization has a higher federally approved indirect rate, which if you do believe your organization does, I believe we usually figure that out during the contracting phase, but certainly you can follow up with your grants coordinator if you have any questions on your indirect rate. A few tips for timely payment. Certainly submit accurate quarterly reports with some of those tips that we provided with the program and with your data. Make sure that your quarterly reports are submitted on time. That allows us to process promptly. Definitely ask for assistance. Don't be shy. Reach out if you're running into any issues. We are happy to work with you to troubleshoot. And then also make sure you are set up for direct deposit within SFS. And we do have a link there if you are currently not where you can enroll. All right. So again, a pretty quick run through of kind of all the different pieces that are going to be needed for your report at the end of the month. I am going to stop sharing my screen at this point certainly, if you have any questions on that, again, I went very quickly just so we could have ample time for our demonstration here. But if you have any questions related to what the expectations are for program or expenditure reporting, certainly reach out to your grants coordinator or feel free to put your question in chat. But without further ado, I do want to hand it over to Liz, who is going to give us a walkthrough of submitting a claim for payment within SFS. And again, that is tied to your expenditure report for this quarterly report. So Liz, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Drew. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. If you can just confirm in a moment that you can see the login page in our test environment, that would be very helpful.
All right. Yep, I can see the login page.
Okay, perfect. So just to clarify, for those that participated in last week's session, this is going to be a repeat, however, with a focus on just the reimbursement claim. And if you haven't already, I'm certain you're going to discover that there are more than one way to do things in the system, and some things are a matter of user preference. So I'll share a specific example in just a moment here. So per Drew's request, we're going to focus on submitting a claim now. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select the submit a claim tile. I'm going to click start. And this is a test environment like I shared last week, a little bit slower than the production environment. So here, as I had mentioned last week, one of the grantees on the call had said, I don't see my contract, and I had pointed out that you have the ability to use the view all or limit the view to just 5. So in this instance today, by design, I'm going to pick one that doesn't show up on the default view for the results when you log in. And I captured that contract number earlier. So I know the one that I want to claim against is contract ID ending in 117698. So instead of doing view all, to pull that specific contract up on the page, we can use the find and simply put in that number, and it will bring it right up for us. So right now, upon the initial implementation of the grants project in SFS, most grantees likely aren't going to have a lot of contract volume. But even those, those that just have, 1 or 2 contracts, it'll just be a matter of time before this page has a number of them in list. Or so I would assume. So it's likely a feature you're going to want to, take advantage of at some point, if not, initially, now that we've gone live. So I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to click select that this is the one that I want to claim against. I'm going to then select the next button. And as I mentioned last week, this is the invoice ID field is a 30-character field that should be something that's meaningful to you as the grantee. Don't pay any attention to the state of New York, what our, preferences are. This is all about you and your record keeping convenience. So something that's meaningful to you to monitor the status of this claim from time of submission to payment. So for my example today, I came up with child nutrition, and I want to invoice for 2023 Q4. That's something that for me personally, I think is meaningful. The other thing I wanted to make sure that we point out is if your organization has more than one location set up in SFS, this is the point in the process you need to validate that the default one is accurate, or if you choose not to use the default. Hypothetically speaking, let's say your organization just switched bank accounts and banks, and that your ACH, you haven't facilitated that update in SFS to make us aware of that. So, but you want payment and you want your money ASAP. You have expenses and deadlines you need to meet. So by default, you're going to select an alternative location other than the default with either a different bank account, if that other location by chance also has ACH, or if it's payment method check. So something to be very mindful of. What you select here will dictate what payment method is associated to that payment once it gets through the review and approval process within the system. So we will assume now that we're satisfied with all of the selections. We're going to click Save. And you can monitor if it's not obvious up here. You had the little clock. And now we're able to, once it has acknowledged the save transaction, it will present you with the next button in the upper right-hand corner. So we're now good to go ahead and advance to the next step in the process. It's at this step that we need to select a contract period that we're going to claim against. In this particular case for this contract, there's only a single period. I'm going to go ahead and select the one here. If I wanted to, as an alternative, I could simply hit one and hit the enter button. Now for today's purpose, we're going to go ahead and focus on a reimbursement claim. And I'm going to just make sure I like everything. I have the right contract period. The period to and from dates are accurate, and I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And now I can advance to the next step in the process. So as you can see here, by default, all of the budget categories that have been set up and associated with the contract will automatically default in, and it will show you the amounts that were approved by budget category, your current cumulative expenditures, and the amount of the budget amount that's available. And in the event match is applicable to your contract, you will see that referenced in the what I refer to as the subgrid below, which is specific to the match funds. As I shared last week, this is a test environment. We do a lot of testing in this environment. So by design, I'm going to keep it at a very low dollar amount for each of these. I'm going to say $10 for salary and $20 for travel. Now here's where I have the opportunity to submit my supporting documentation. So in this case, I'm going to select line attachments. I'm going to click add attachment. And I did do some preparation this morning to try to make this a little bit quicker. So I'm going to put the payroll for week ending January 19th last week. I'm going to select upload. Now I already have a pretty clear, I hope, descriptor of what the file represents, but I could use the same, or I could do something here and do ADP payroll receipt. Doesn't have to be the same. I'm going to click OK. Now that was for salary. By design, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to select line attachments because I know I also have documentation around travel. I'm going to click the plus button, add attachment, choose my file. In this case, I did travel mileage, and I'll open these documents up in a moment when we get a little bit further downstream in the process. I'm going to do upload. And here I'm just going to put MapQuest mileage. I'm going to click OK. Now, for this scenario, we're going to say, hypothetically, I deal with this agency on a very regular basis, and they're very accustomed to seeing me not only claiming reimbursement for mileage, but also for my tolls that I incur in my travel. But unfortunately, I went into my Easy Pass account last night to try to download my most recent 3 statements, and I got myself locked out. I'm going to, in this case, just put in a comment that waiting for Easy Pass account password reset. Will submit claim for tolls under separate cover. I'm sure that's not what you folks would say, but as I've discovered the last 3 years working this project, it's a whole different universe. So my hat's off to all you folks that work in the grant community. I'm going to go ahead now. I'm happy. Oh, my cost incurred date. So in my hypothetical example, I'm going to put June, needed to keep it actually. I did Q4. I apologize. I didn't really think that through. We're going to put December 1st, 23. And as I had shared for those that were able to participate last week, there is a system validation. The cost incurred from and to date must fall within the period from and to dates associated to the contract. Otherwise, it will throw an error on the page and you'll have to correct those dates. I'm going to go ahead and click Save. Next.
And then right before we move on, Liz, just want to see, is there any recommendations as far as the preferred like PDF or any restrictions on uploading attachments?
So that is a system requirement. It has to be, all attachments must be in the form of a PDF and in a 20 megabyte size limit. I'm a functional resource, not technical. What I can say that based on other projects and implementation experience, I know that logos and header detail contained within documents sometimes will impact the size of the PDF. So we have seen instances where a 100-page document will stay under the 20 megabyte limit, while another one with 50, depending on what's embedded within those pages, could result in more and force the user to break them out into separate documents to meet that 20 megabyte requirement within the system. Does that help answer the question, Drew?
I believe so. I do see a hand up from Jesse. Jesse, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Drew. Hi, Liz. When we were doing some contracting within the last week or two, we did run into an issue with uploading an attachment, specifically a PDF, where it wasn't taking and it wasn't successfully uploading. And then it was also our understanding in our SFS help desk ticket response that fillable PDFs can create an issue. Is that something that you've also encountered? That was on the contracting end, so I am kind of half assuming that that might be the same with claims as well.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you bring this up. I initially encountered that with a project back in 2018. It was specific to the fillable PDFs, and at that particular point in time, the decision was to not support them, period, because of the vulnerability that they created, I believe, with being hacked or whatnot. So I will need to take that back. I will talk to the executive team here and see whether or not that decision was modified at some point in any way, or if it still stands today and for that same reason. But I will gladly take that as an action item and get back to you ASAP.
Okay, we appreciate that. But in the meantime, I think with the timeliness of these reports coming due, can you confirm that the solution that was given to me was if you're going to save that PDF that you were working on, that you could save it as basically like a Microsoft print to PDF, and that's what changes some characteristics of the file so that it can then successfully upload. I believe that was one option. There might be some other options as well for how the file can be converted so it can be accepted in SFS.
I do believe that to be a true statement, but I will fact check whether that's the only option or if there are others.
Great, thank you. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. And I'll try to get those answers to you by end of day, 5:30. Are we okay, Drew?
I think we are okay to keep moving on. Thank you, Liz.
Sure. So I want to just zero in here on the bottom section of the claim. This is where we see kind of like summary detail. This is where you would see the line level comment that was entered. It captures the user that entered it, whoever's logged in to submit the claim, and the date timestamp when it was entered. Now here it will always roll up if there's multiple attachments. It's going to show just the one initially, but you can click the view all and see any and all. Here's where I just want to show you, demonstrate that you can view. And in my hypothetical example for payroll, I just put in, identify the name of the employee, the hours worked each day, total hours, hourly rate, and the gross payroll. I gotta try to. Okay. And then here for my mileage, this is where you'll see where I just captured for my hypothetical scenario that I went from Albany to Lenox, Massachusetts, and I was claiming for 45.4 miles. Now, I know Drew had mentioned at the top of the call that it is possible if you have some type of supporting documentation that is relative to your quarterly claim as a whole, and not necessarily one specific line level budget category claim. Here's where you have the ability at the header level, you can attach documentation header level. Obviously, I apologize, I didn't do that at that step, but it can be, you can attach supporting documentation at the header level in addition to at the claim line level. Now, at this step in the process, we can certify that our claim entry is complete. Click the certification, and as I hope you picked up on, it's upon clicking of this attestation / certification that the signatory name and the date will populate in these fields below. And now I have an opportunity, as we shared last week, maybe I'm not really ready to submit this. I want to look at it again in a couple hours or tomorrow morning with fresh eyes, or have somebody else that's sitting, nearby, take a quick peek, make sure I really like this. If I'm not quite ready to submit it, but I don't want to lose it, I can just click the save button. But it's very important that grantees understand, until you click the save and the submit button and get this confirmation that it's been submitted, the state agency folks, Jesse, Drew, Kendra, they will have no ability, none whatsoever, to see this claim in the system. It strictly remains on the supplier portal side of the system until it's submitted. And then and only then does it become accessible to the state agency for the review and approval process. So I just want to make sure that it's very clear to folks that until it's submitted and you get that confirmation on the page that it's been submitted, and you have this very important claim number here at the top, to track the status of your claim once it's been submitted into the agency employee portal side of the system, where they can, review and approve. So Drew, I see we are at 2:40. If we have a couple minutes, I just want to go to another page in the system that I think is going to be key for your grantees to monitor what you folks on the agency side of the review process, how they can monitor what happens after they've successfully submitted it.
I think that would be wonderful if you could share, Liz. Thank you.
Absolutely. Let me go ahead. I'm going to try to move these status bars. And again, there are ways, there's more than one way typically. With most things in the system, it's a matter of user preference. If there's a particular page that you use regularly and frequently in SFS and you don't want to use the navigational bar to get there, you can use the user preference feature up here to save it as a direct tile on your homepage to save you those, 4, 5, 6 clicks. But I'm going to go here now, e-settlements, claim inquiry. Now you have an opportunity here, and again, it's going to depend on the size of your organization and how many contracts likely that you have in play with the state of New York and how many different state agencies. But you can create numerous inquiries that are specific to a contract or a business unit. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put, in my case, I want to keep track of all contracts I have claims in flight for. With the Office of Mental Health. That happens to be the only agency for this vendor we have set up in test. So unfortunately, I can't demonstrate how to do multiple. So I'm going to save. Now, as you can see, we've done a lot of testing in recent months. So we have a lot of claims, 190, as you can see. Again, this is going to be, a feature you're going to want to become familiar with. If you do a lot of claiming, you can limit the view or use the find function. You can also sort these fields, but it's here in particular. This is the claim status. It will show you if it's with the agency review, if it's been submitted, if it's complete. And in this particular case, this is an example where somebody within the agency review process deemed that they wanted additional information from you in order to support the approval of your claim. So this is one in particular, when you see that, you're going to want to pay attention because it can't advance until whatever the need by the agency has been fulfilled. And in this particular case, until it's reviewed, let me pick one here. In process, maybe this one here canceled. I'm gonna say, I'm gonna pick this one just randomly. So when you select it, until the agency has actually started the review process, this reviewed field will say no, but clearly we can see here that it has been reviewed by the agency and it was last modified by them on March 6th. This obviously was an old one, and the date and time stamp. You have an opportunity here to preview your claim. I believe this is a document that was very similar to what you were familiar with in the Grants Gateway system. It was actually done that way by design. It just rolls up everything that was submitted associated to the claim and when. I'm going to close out of here. And then if it's in workflow with the agency, you can see the view approvals hyperlink, and it will show you at what step in that process the claim is. Back to the home. No, I don't want to save that. Okay, I think those were the key points that I wanted to be sure to share with your grantees today, Drew. Is if there's any other questions or clarification from a SFS system perspective, I'm happy to answer if possible.
Yeah, thank you again very, very much, Liz, for joining and for giving a live demonstration of what folks are going to be experiencing as they prep for the quarterly reports. We'll certainly open it up at this point for questions. We do have a couple here, Liz. So if the claim was returned, how would they proceed to resubmit that claim?
So it's as simple as noting whatever the comment was that was conveyed by the agency user. If they want, you know, hey, you didn't give me your mileage supporting documentation, upload that. Once they, you know, fulfill whatever the ask is, they'll be able to submit the, you know, hit submit again a second time, and it will submit the claim back into the agency workflow.
So just be updating the claim that was already worked on and resubmit.
Absolutely. Yep. The system will maintain a log of that interaction between the grantee and the agency staff.
All right, wonderful. If that didn't answer your question, Johanna, please feel free to respond in chat. Or as I see, Carol, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you, Drew. And thanks, Liz. I just had a little bit of an issue with my role assignment. So there's, for New York Alliance for Inclusion and Innovation, I will do different things like bid response. I do a lot of the contract, grant contracts. I also do the invoice processing and also the pre-qualification.
So you do it all.
Yeah, pretty much, except for I don't sign the contracts. That's what our CEO does. So a couple weeks ago, we had asked for permission for role mapping for myself. So I hadn't seen it yesterday. I was working yesterday with our accountant and I'm looking at my tiles. I still don't have the access to it. So I sent a note to the help desk and went through, I did a screenshot, showed him that I don't have it, and then explained what I needed. So it was interesting. I signed on to the SFS system earlier on in this presentation so I can follow it through my system. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is fantastic. I'm up to my 12 tiles or 13 tiles that I need on my home page. So I got timed out. I had to log back in, and lo and behold, I'm back to my original 7 tiles.
Something seemed very odd there.
Yeah.
I'm going to investigate, but the one thing that came to mind when you were, you know, sharing is it's not really the help desk that can assist with role mapping. That would be your delegated administrator.
They did that. They went onto the system and assigned me these various roles.
Okay.
So we were assuming that it may take a little while for the system to process the roles, and maybe that was the issue. So I did send a note to the help desk that our system administrator here at New York Alliance had assigned me these roles. Sent it out yesterday, and then again, 2 o'clock today when I signed in, I had the access to, you know, like the grant management tiles. Got timed out, logged back on, and lo and behold, I don't have it anymore.
So the one thing that I know that I hear often from our technical folks is that if you experience that, sometimes it's a cache issue, and they will recommend, it's kind of like when computers first came out, they would tell you, you know, reboot and start over. So I would highly recommend that you try that. In the meantime, I will take that as an action item. I'm going to go ahead and work behind the scenes to verify your role mapping and see, you know, if I can decipher what's happened when and whatnot. And I'll reach out to you separately to focus on that. But hearing you speak to that issue, I wanted to just make sure that I reminded folks that you still have access to the test environment. So if you're not quite comfortable with the production yet and you want to just, you know, try it out first in the test environment, feel free. That environment will remain open and available to you for the next few months. So feel free. And also, I know we touched on it briefly last week. We do have a standing grantee / vendor call on Wednesdays, I believe 11 to 12. Don't don't hold me to the time slot, but it's definitely on Wednesdays, and that will be held for the next few months in case there's any, issues that you're experiencing. And I do want to share with you, I don't want anybody to be alarmed. Some people are very taken aback, like we're spying on them, but with every major project implementation, such as this one, we have a stabilization period where everyone on our side is monitoring to make sure that we don't see any evidence of system issues. As hard as we try to test things out, inevitably a user will find a different way or sequence of steps to use in the system that will, fortunately, rarely cause an issue. So we do have, because of our access to the vendor record, we do, we can in all likelihood either make contact with you via phone or email if we see anything go awry. But I just wanted to reassure you that usually only happens for 6 to 8 weeks. And then, once we see concrete evidence that there aren't any issues and everybody's able to do their work successfully, we will, disable that or discontinue that practice. But for right now, we're watching. And I don't want to, I'm not trying to alarm anybody. I just want you to know that we may see something before you or may discover it at the same time as you, and we'll reach out to you. Our goal at the end of the day is to make sure that you have, nothing but a positive experience using the system, and that we haven't missed anything.
That's great. It's very comforting. Thank you for your help. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'll be in touch soon. And it very possibly could be through Drew. Or his agency. I'll be honest with you. It's very unique that I have an opportunity to work with the end users. Typically, we support just the New York State agency staff. So this has, been a very rare experience, but, very pleasurable to actually get to hear and, see you folks and hear firsthand your experience using the system. So thanks to Drew and his team for including me.
Thank you, Liz. And I do have the privilege of helping manage the grant with the New York Alliance and Carol. So we're in communication often anyway. So we'll certainly, Carol, if you keep running into that issue, definitely keep us in the loop. And Liz, I'm happy to relay whatever we're able to find over to Carol.
Thank
so
you.
we do have a few more questions coming through. I do want to hit them in the order. So I'm going to start with Jan.
Hi, I had just wanted to comment on that same issue. I'm having the same thing. I need to be able to check the contracts also, in addition to invoicing, not to sign them or anything, but to look at them. And so they assigned me that role. And when I go into the grants management state, sometimes the grant contract search tile is there, sometimes it's not. But if I go back out and go back in, then it'll show up again. But then when I go to click on it, when it is there, I get several different messages. Sometimes I get, you're not authorized for this component. Sometimes I get, there's an integrity error. And sometimes it lets me get one screen in and then it kicks me back out and then the tile disappears again. So I did ask our administrator, who said that they've kind of been in contact. They said there is kind of a bug or a glitch or something going on, but I just wanted to say it's not just you, Carol. We're all kind of, I'm experiencing that too. So, but not in the invoicing, which is wonderful. Just in trying to search for a contract and check out some of the terms.
So thank you very much for sharing. I will say this, it is typically better when more than one user is experiencing something, because it makes it a lot easier for us to replicate it and troubleshoot it. And I will share this, we're not a 9-to-5 shop. I want to absolutely reassure you that pretty much, we have folks available and that are working around the clock. So in those rare instances where there are issues like what you're describing with the tiles, typically they're resolved within, same day, next business day, or ASAP at least. So I would just want to give you, reassurance that will not be a long-standing problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then just going back to you, Carol, you do currently have the ability to claim submit. Is it different tiles that are popping up, or is that one that you're losing as well?
I think that's one that I'm losing also.
Okay. All right, just wanted to flag, as most folks know that, the claim submissions and the quarterly reports at the end of the month are the primary focus, but certainly reach out if there's other issues related to your roles specifically within your organizations and accessing SFS. So I do want to go to, we had a comment in the chat before we go over to you, Johanna. So Ray asked, we just logged in and tried to create our Q2 invoice. For the previous cumulative expenditure, it shows all zero, which doesn't include our Q1 numbers. Do we need to enter the Q1 numbers again? So it is sounding like, Ray, if I'm understanding you correctly, you had a previous claim probably submitted in the grants gateway, and then those numbers are not showing up within SFS. Am I correct in that? Yes. So without knowing your specific grant, and correct me if I'm wrong, Liz, but I do believe that if the claim was approved in SFS and paid, it should have transferred over to SFS. So we just may need to look.
Correct. However, I will share, I did support the claims conversion process from the gateway into SFS last weekend. And there were a number of instances, I believe it was published out onto SFS Secure. This is more specific to state agencies. Grantees wouldn't have access to this, but pointing out to agencies that you should go ahead, review the results of the conversion and make sure that there wasn't an issue. There were known issues where if the contract identified on a claim in Grants Gateway didn't match the invoice ID field on the approved and paid voucher in SFS, they would have errored out. So I believe there was some type of announcement, Drew, specifically like right now before claiming, starts, that agencies go in and validate the contract, the current cumulative amounts and available amounts on a contract before that first claim is, approved and paid.
All right.
Otherwise, it could be necessary for an agency to submit an adjustment claim to true up those numbers.
Understood. So Ray, we'll look a little further into it on our end in what your specific scenario is, but certainly I guess that's a good flag for other folks. If you do see any discrepancies with previous claims and the expenditures, definitely flag, and we will certainly take a look at everybody's current status within SFS. So thank you for raising that, Ray, and we'll be following up. Johanna?
Yes, I just wanted to add to the issue with the access. So I've been trying to resolve the role assignments within YI, which YI is a big organization, so it's a lot of conversation about who should have which level access. However, I've been assured that I was given those roles that I requested, but I still don't have a submission button at all, and I've never seen it. And so I would just wanted to add to the list that there's more people who have trouble with that. And if we could, as a follow-up, get like the following information. There was the mentioning of the vendor calls that are weekly. If we can get that information, how to get those, how to get there. The test environment was mentioned. If there could be, again, like I don't remember I've never seen that either. If we can get access to that until I get to actually submit a claim, I could at least try it out. And then Caroline mentioned the help desk. Can we add that in the email, where the help desk is in regards to their technical issues? And then I know, Drew, you are the CDD contact, and maybe give a little bit of guideline on for what to contact Drew or contact SFS directly, so we can not make it more complicated, but be effective when we try to flag things. I would really appreciate it, and I appreciate everybody's effort into making this happen. It looks like when it's running, the tiles seem like a very nice system compared to Grants Gateway. So hoping we're going to get it up and running soon. Thank you.
So Drew, I do have the details behind that 11 to 12 o'clock grantee call for tomorrow. If it's okay, I'll forward that to you via email. I think you have a list for your grantees that you can share with them in turn.
Absolutely. And, you know, any kind of upcoming information that we can communicate to our vendors, certainly let me know so I can relay that over to folks. Joanna, I don't know what you guys receive from SFS directly. So if there are things being missed, I do apologize, but we certainly do our best to get, you know, anything upcoming and useful over to you as we are made aware. Certainly we'll give you the SFS contact information as well. I believe that was in a previous email, but we'll include it in this one as well. And Joanna, I mean, typically if it's an SFS related question at this point, I don't think in-house we have the know-how to troubleshoot a lot of issues, so they would probably be the better spot to go. But I definitely would encourage you letting myself or your grants coordinator know what you're running into, just so we can have it on our radar, you know, and use, you know, Liz, who has been very gracious with her time, and follow up with her or the help desk to make sure that we're moving things in the right direction.
Yeah, on that note, it's helpful if we all stay on the same page with each other, because typically once you troubleshoot it for one, now you have the knowledge to fast track it for the next person that has a similar experience. So it's very helpful to share and be on the same page with everybody.
And thank you, Jackie. So there is now in the chat too the contact information for the SFS help desk. Of course, we will still include that in the follow-up email, but you're more than welcome to grab it from there as well. I do want to say we are a little past 3. Liz, I do want to be very conscious of your time and availability. I'm happy to stay on if there are any other questions, but if you need to hop off.
Bear with me one moment, Drew.
Sure. So if there are any other questions for Liz or for the council, you know, definitely feel free to put them in chat. Whether we can get to it now or if we need to follow up separately, just so we're aware.
I can stay on for another 30.
So we do have Liz for a few more minutes if anybody has specific questions. Jan?
Yeah, I was just wondering, I know Johanna just had brought it up. And maybe I missed it, I'm sorry, but the test environment, how do you get to that? Didn't you say we could work in the test environment?
Yes, so there should be, I'm gonna, bear with me, I'm gonna go to the supplier portal homepage and fact check where that hyperlink is to that for you. Bear with me.
Okay.
And I certainly don't want to hold anybody who does not have any questions here. You are certainly more than welcome to hop off if you have other things to get to. And that includes CDD staff. I know we have. Here, Jackie, I see your hand while Liz is pulling that up.
Yeah, super quick question. Is there a web browser that's more compatible with SFS or a recommended web browser?
There is. Checking now to see what they have. I believe it's Microsoft Edge. Yes. You can use, if you're trying to open to like the test environment and the production environment at the same page, there is some kind of control where you have to use different browsers. So those of us at SFS, we have both Edge and the Google Chrome, but the preferred is Edge. It apparently makes for a better user experience.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. So I do not see a direct link from the supplier portal, and I'm going to share briefly, Drew. That's okay.
Yep.
So if you just go to sfsny.gov to our homepage, when I click on the vendors hyperlink, I'm not seeing another tile for direct access to that test environment. So that leads me to believe that likely it was shared via an email communication by our communications team. But I know I heard earlier today that it is still available and was being encouraged to be used. So I will unfortunately have to take that as an action item to determine exactly how access was provided to users. We have a lot of projects in play, so unfortunately we can't always just put a tile on the homepage, so I apologize.
Well, thank you for looking into it, Liz, and certainly if that's something we find later, I can share as a follow-up to the group. I do see a note from Jay. Hi, Drew, do you have my sharing? So we'll absolutely be sharing the PowerPoint after this. And, you know, we're hoping as we get more comfortable and familiar with SFS and how that impacts our quarterly reporting processes to develop more instructional guides to make it as simple as possible when it comes time for submitting reports. Yeah, so we'll be sharing a number of things post this call during the week, including this recording, the PowerPoint, and we're going to timestamp the recording so you can find the information that you're looking for.